One of the United States' top generals delivered a much-anticipated speech in Ottawa Wednesday, at a time when the Canadian defence community is deeply alarmed about the future of Canada-US military relations.
The United States has cautioned Canada against backing out of its purchase of American-made F-35 fighter jets, warning it of potential fallout if the deal is scrapped.
What happens when a country gambles its entire defense on a political stunt? What if the very skies protecting millions suddenly became vulnerable not because of an enemy attack, but because of one leader's reckless gamble? That's exactly the question hanging over Canada today. A deal once celebrated as the cornerstone of national security has turned into a dangerous game of chicken with the United States, and the stakes couldn't be higher. When Mark Carney stepped into the role of Prime Minister, he promised strength. He promised independence. He promised to put Canada first. His first major move, a bold declaration: Canada would review its massive $19 billion agreement to purchase 88 state-of-the-art F-35 fighter jets from American manufacturer Lockheed Martin. At first glance, it sounded powerful Canada standing up to its bigger neighbor, demanding better deals, insisting on sovereignty. But here's the problem. The ink on that deal was already dry. Billions had already been committed. 16 jets were already locked in, contracts binding, payments made. Carney wasn't tearing up a draft agreement. He was trying to rip apart a legal contract that Washaw had no intention of reopening. To many Canadians, it looked like a fresh start. To defense experts, it looked like political theater. To the United States, it looked like weakness. Washington holds the cards. Donald Trump, never one to mince words, saw right through the spectacle. Carney's bluff meant nothing to him. The United States didn't need to renegotiate, already had the money, the contracts, and the production lines humming. For Washington, the deal was a done deal. For Canada, undoing it would mean paying double, losing credibility, and facing delays that would cripple its already aging air fleet. Carney's rhetoric suggested leverage. The reality? America had every card in its hand, and Canada had none. And that's where the danger comes in. Canada's Air Force isn't just buying planes. It's buying into a system. The F-35 isn't simply a fighter jet's a key component in a sprawling defense network that links training, weapons, systems, supply chains, and integration with NORAD, the joint US-Canada command that defends North American skies. If Ottawa pulled out now, that entire chain would collapse. The mirage of alternatives. Of course, Carney didn't stand at the podium and admit that. Instead, he dangled the idea of alternatives. The Saab Gripen fighter jet Sweden's offering was once a competitor in the procurement process, but it lost, and it lost for a reason. The Gripen simply couldn't fit into the NORAD system. You can't just slot in a foreign jet and expect it to integrate seamlessly with decades of American-designed training programs, radar systems, and weapon upgrades. Still, Carney spoke of options, reviews, and prudence. But for military planners, the talk was laughable. Alternatives weren't leverage, they were fantasy. Canada's military on the brink. While Carney tried to project strength abroad, the situation at home was already dire. A leaked readiness report revealed a chilling fact. Only 40% of Canada's air fleet is currently fit to fly. The rest? Grounded, stuck in maintenance, or too old to be reliable. That reality hits hardest when you consider what Canada's current air defense is built on: the CF-18 Hornets. First introduced in 1982, these aircraft are for decades old, far past their intended service life. Every year, more of them spend months grounded, waiting for spare parts, while fewer and fewer are actually combat-ready. The F-35s were supposed to be the lifeline, the replacement, the future-proofing of Canada's skies. Instead, politics is putting that future in jeopardy. The economic carrot, Lockheed Martin, sensing the political storm, offered a sweetener: jobs. The company hinted at shifting some maintenance and support work to Canada, creating long-term employment opportunities for Canadian workers. But let's be clear, this wasn't production. The heart of the F-35 program, the design, the high-tech manufacturing, the most lucrative contracts remains firmly in the United States. What Canada would get is crumbs compared to the feast south of the border. Some maintenance work here, maybe some parts assembly there. Enough for politicians to brag about job creation, but nowhere near enough to offset the dependence. Yet Carney clung to this promise like it was a trophy. He paraded it as proof of victory while ignoring the glaring reality. Canada's aerospace sector survives. Because it is tied to the US, cut those ties, and the entire industry trembles. Europe, the wrong dance partner. Making matters worse, Carney chose Europe as his first international stop, rather than Washington. The optics couldn't have been worse. Instead of reinforcing Canada's critical partnership with its most important ally, Carney signaled a pivoting attempt to diversify defense and trade ties by courting European suppliers. But Europe isn't NORAD. Europe can't defend Canadian skies. Europe can't integrate seamlessly into a command structure that has bound Canada and the US together for decades. In trying to look bold, Carney instead looked reckless. He looked desperate, and to many, he looked naive. The threat of collapse, this isn't just about fighter jets. It's about national credibility. It's about whether Canada can be trusted as a serious defense partner, or whether it's just a junior ally playing dress-up. Walking away from the F-35 program now would send shockwaves through every corner of Canada's defense and aerospace industry. Supply chains would unravel. Pilots would be stranded, waiting years for new training programs. Billions already invested would be flushed away. And all the while, the US would continue to strengthen its position, watching as Canada flailed. The brutal truth is simple. Without the United States, Canada's military isn't just weaker, it's non-functional. That's the reality Carney refuses to say out loud. And that's the gamble that could leave Canada exposed to the world, its skies undefended, its credibility shattered. The question now is, how much longer can this dangerous game continue before it breaks the country entirely? What happens when your strongest ally no longer trusts you? What if the partner that defends your borders decides you're not worth the risk? For Canada, that nightmare scenario is no longer hypothetical. It's inching closer with every reckless move. A fragile military. Canada's armed forces are already under immense strain. The Air Force, stretched thin with only 40% of its jets flyable, is just one piece of the puzzle. Across the military, readiness has been steadily eroding. Ships are aging. Training programs are underfunded. Modernization efforts are years behind schedule. And yet, this is the exact moment Prime Minister Carney chose to challenge the very backbone of Canada's defense, the relationship with the United States. Instead of securing the lifeline, Carney lit a match near the powder keg. The illusion of independence. Carney talks about independence. He talks about diversifying Canada's defense supply chains, cutting down reliance on the US, and opening the door to European partners. On paper, it sounds visionary. In reality, it's smoke and mirrors. Why? Because Canada's entire defense structure, its ships, planes, weapon systems, radar, even training runs on American technology and American integration. NORAD isn't optional. It isn't a partnership Canada can just replace. It is the bedrock of Canada's national security. Trying to walk away from that isn't strength, it's suicide. Trump's calculated silence. Meanwhile, south of the border, Donald Trump isn't losing any sleep over Carney's theatrics. He knows the game better than anyone. Trump has seen world leaders bluff and posture before. He knows Canada can't walk away without devastating itself in the process. That's why Washington has been calm, almost dismissive. The US doesn't need to issue threats. The contracts are signed. The payments are binding. 16 jets are already in production. Billions are guaranteed. If Canada dares to pull out, it won't hurt America. It will devastate Ottawa. The cost of buying replacements, retraining pilots, building new supply chains, and retooling defense infrastructure would skyrocket into the tens of billions. And Canada's credibility with allies would evaporate overnight. The cost of delay. Every day this review drags on, Canada pays a price. Delays mean older CF-18 jets remain in service longer, demanding more costly maintenance just to stay in the air. Pilots lose precious time that should be spent transitioning to new systems. Supply chains grow more uncertain as manufacturers and partners hesitate to commit when the political picture is so unstable. It's not just a matter of dollars, it's a matter of security. If a crisis erupted tomorrow, could Canada truly defend its own skies? Could it meet its NATO commitments? Could it even protect its northern borders without American backup? The answer, quietly whispered in military circles, is no. Jobs as a distraction. Carney's team continues to cling to Lockheed Martin's promise of Canadian jobs, maintenance centers, support facilities, long-term contracts. Those are the carrots being dangled. Canada will never be the hub of the F-35 program. The cutting-edge technology, the production lines, the intellectual property, all of that is locked in America. What Canada gets is limited, carefully controlled, and only as long as Ottawa doesn't rock the boat, push too far, and even that sliver disappears. Europe won't save Canada. In his first weeks, Carney toured Europe before even setting foot in Washington. The symbolism was clear. He wanted to signal a new direction, a diversification of Canada's defense and trade ties. But Europe is not a replacement for America. The Saab Gripen, no matter how much Carney waves it around, cannot integrate into NORAD. European defense networks do not cover North American skies, but they're crumbs compared to the banquet happening in the US. And no European leader is going to spend billions propping up Canada's military when their own budgets are stretched thin by conflicts closer to home. Carney's European flirtation isn't strategy, it's fantasy, and it risks insulting the very ally Canada depends on the most: industry on edge. Carney paints this as victory, but every defense analyst knows the truth. Those jobs only exist if Canada plays by Washington's rules. Canada's aerospace industry is already bracing for fallout. Bombardier, one of the country's flagship companies, has warned that tensions with the US could jeopardize cross-border contracts. Thousands of Canadian jobs are tied to American partnerships. If Washington decides to retaliate, the shockwaves could devastate the entire sector. This isn't just about jets, it's about survival. The aerospace supply chain, the defense contracts, the training programs, all of it is deeply intertwined with the United States. If Ottawa pulls too hard on that thread, the entire fabric unravels. A military collapse in slow motion. The phrase sounds dramatic, but experts aren't mincing words. Canada is staring at the possibility of a slow-motion military collapse. Not because of foreign invasion, not because of a surprise attack, but because of political hubris. Carney promised strength and sovereignty. Instead, his first major act has exposed weakness and dependence. Instead of securing Canada's future, he's risking decades of instability. The CF-18s will limp along until 2032, but every year between now and then is a gamble. Every year, the risk grows that Canada won't have enough ready aircraft to defend its own skies. And every year, America's dominance in the relationship grows clearer. The harsh reality: here's the truth no politician wants to admit. Canada cannot afford to walk away. Not financially, not militarily, not diplomatically. The United States holds every card. Trump knows it. Washington knows it. Even Carney, deep down, must know it. But pride and politics push him forward, pretending leverage exists where none does. What Canada risks isn't just billions of wasted dollars. It's its reputation. Its trust with allies. It's the very credibility of its military. A dangerous precedent. The bigger question is this: what message does Canada send to the world when its first act under a new leader is trying to unravel a binding defense agreement? To allies, it looks unreliable. To adversaries, it looks weak. To Washington, it looks foolish. This is the precedent Carney has set, and it's one that could haunt Canada for decades to come. The final warning: Mark Carney entered office promising a new era of Canadian strength. Instead, his decisions have pushed the country to the brink of a defense disaster. Trump is unmoved. Washington is unshaken. The contracts are binding. The jets are coming, whether Ottawa likes it or not. But every move Carney makes to posture, delay, or review the deal only deepens the risk. Canada's military is already fragile. Its air force is already outdated. Its aerospace industry is already vulnerable. And now, with one reckless gamble, Canada faces the possibility of not just weakness, but collapse. The question remains: will Carney recognize the danger before it's too late? Or will history remember him as the man who gambled away Canada's security in a bid for political theater?